Can't see any hands being raised. So we'll continue to item number 2. Are there any declarations of interest, please? No. Once again, I can't see any hands being raised, so we'll proceed to number 3, which is notice of urgent matters. I haven't received any notification of any urgent matters, so that will not apply. So we'll go on to item number 4, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of March, which we'll deal with in terms of accuracy to begin with. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, and lastly, page 6. I can't see any hands being raised, so can I have somebody to propose that we accept them as an accurate record, please? Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Seconder. Thank you, Anthony. Will you all show that you're in agreement, please? Diolch yn fawr. I've been through the minutes of the last meeting and I can't see that there's anything as chair that I need to update you on. So we'll move on to item number 5, which is the report on the risks and mitigations around the Hub Owen Training Centre project. And I think it's ACFO Justin Evans who's presenting this report. Diolch, Justin.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. So this paper presents members with an update on the key risks associated with the Hub Owen Training Centre project, the mitigations that we have in place, and the work that we're doing to strengthen the funding position and overall case for investment. The project remains strategically important and a priority for the service. It's intended to address long-standing limitations in our current training estate and to provide a modern, safe and sustainable facility that supports operational competence, firefighter health and well-being and wider organisational resilience. Members will be aware that approval was previously granted to progress the project to REBA Stage 4. The key issue now is that this stage represents a significant point of commitment. So in practical terms, it begins to lock in the design solutions and associated costs with the centre. And in the absence of secured capital funding for the development of the site, this presents a material risk for the project. This position is therefore being reviewed carefully through our project governance arrangements, not because our strategic need has changed, but because we must ensure that the next steps remain proportionate and are properly controlled. So in response to that risk, the project team are actively exploring funding opportunities across a number of domains. And we're doing so on the basis that a big project like this, of this scale, is unlikely to be funded through a single route. So initial conversations have already taken place with the previous Welsh Government administration, and briefing correspondence has been issued to key stakeholders, setting out the service's wider organisational direction and our plans for the development of this training centre. So those discussions will now be refreshed with the new administration, and there'll be clear emphasis on the ways in which the project aligns with current and emerging policy priorities. So our outline business case that I brought here previously remains live and will continue to development. And that's important because it gives us opportunity to keep working on that case and strengthen it further as new information emerges. Members will know from previous updates that our preferred direction has been for a centralised, purpose-built facility capable of supporting operational, corporate and multi-agency functions, and that remains the position now. So at this stage, there's no compelling argument to materially reduce the scale or ambition of our plans and proposals, but we do need to make sure that the business case is as strong as it can be and is well-rounded before we commit any sort of major commitments and lock those in. We've been having discussions with other Category 1 responders about possible shared use of the site, and alongside that, we've been looking more broadly about how development could contribute to community resilience and social value. So that means considering how the site may not only support our training, but the operational preparedness and wider resilience of of other partners within the region. So this includes speaking with local resilience forum and other community stakeholders. The project board has reviewed the current risk profile and key milestones, and as a mitigation, the project delivery team has proposed a short and controlled slowdown of the programme. And the intention here is not to lose momentum of our project, but to create some more space for us to have further engagement with these stakeholders, have more discussions around funding, and refine that outline business case before the project reaches a more committed stage. And that's a prudent approach to the current level of uncertainty, and it's consistent with this sort of disciplined, risk-based approach that we've been taking throughout this project. And whilst the outline business case continues to make a compelling case for change, we do need to be realistic that it may not in isolation secure all of the funding that's required from that single source. So for that reason, we're now considering how a blending approach may need to be developed, potentially including grants, perhaps some borrowing or other support from other partners. But members are not being asked to commit to that today. However, I do think it's important that I'm open, and if external funding routes do not fully materialise, options involving support from local authorities may need to be brought back to the table for consideration through budget setting at a later stage. What I can give is assurance that would be all evidence-based and on a proportionate basis with full member scrutiny. And I guess for members that position could be concerning, and I don't want to understate it, but I want to offer assurance that the work is being progressed by a capable team through clear governance and with a very continued focus on managing that risk and protecting the authority's position. So I suppose just to sum up, I would like to sort of remind members this remains an important and necessary project for the service. The risks are real, particularly around funding, but they are understood and they're being actively managed, and we are continuing our work to improve the strength of our proposition before we commit any further. So the recommendations in the paper are therefore simply that members note those current risks and those mitigations, note the proposed adjustments to the programme, and note that at this stage no further funding commitment is being sought. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Justin, for that update. Councillor Mark, Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for this. So we fully understand the project is going to have to happen, isn't it? If you read the reports, these are, the safety of our firefighters for now and moving into the future is absolutely critical. So I guess you've mentioned funding as well, which is a big part of it, and they're linked. So I guess my two questions, and I think we should all understand this, is the plan B, because the report talks about risk of facilities and is a knock-on to the risk of our firefighters, how you manage that short and long term. And we all know the financial pressures of our council authorities in North Wales. So I guess at some point we have to have the decision and the decision to chat and have them grown-up chats with the authorities. And while I understand we're not doing it now, I think we have to agree, because it's going to be, whatever option we take, it's going to be a cost, and we know these pressures there already. And at some point it could become unmanageable for the authorities under financial pressure. So I'm just wondering if them chats have started, should start, and I guess we have to be flexible but open with everyone involved, because I wouldn't want to be going just before their budget setting with a big request. So how are we managing all that? So I'm not saying it's easy, Chair, but I think we need to understand the process for the financial part and keeping our firefighters safe with a plan B. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. There's just, I suppose, a couple of points on that. I suppose in terms of Plan B, if you recall when I brought originally the strategic outline case and then the outline business case here, I suppose those reports both outline not only a Plan B but plan A through F, I guess, in that we spoke about all the options at that point that were open to the authority and the risks associated with each. And some of those range from health risks to staff, risk to the capabilities of our operational workforce, also in terms of our legal compliance. So there's lots of things that we put out there in terms of those options. I guess bringing back options for members to consider. I mean, when I presented that previously, we had I guess a sweet spot where members agreed, which was a suitable direction forward. In terms of alternatives, I guess anything that we do, if we reconsider that position, it's making sure that whatever we present to members is balances something that is meaningful, something that is built for the future, because we're not talking about a training centre for 2026. We're probably talking about a training centre for 2046. You know, we've got to think about the risks that we're going to be facing in the future. So I appreciate the financial pressures that lots of public bodies face, but it would be making sure that whatever is proposed and the discussions we have through normal budget setting would take into account the needs of a modern fire and rescue service balanced against the needs for it to be affordable.
Okay, so just on that, Chair, for May, I think where I'm getting at, so I fully understand you've been updating us. At some point, you are going to have to take action on the keeping everyone safe and the training capacity. At some point, it's going to become critical. And on the finance, there has to be a point where we have to have them discussions with the authorities. So you're absolutely right. It's not about health and safety, also the training of our firefighters. That's been picked up as reports where you need to get better. So at some point, we're going to have to do it. And we can't just have an update. There has to be a committed date at this point, and it's a milestone. So you might not be able to give it today, but is there a commitment to understand and share them milestones? I guess I'm asking, please, Justin.
Yeah.
I think CFO Hannah MacArthur wants to come in. Hannah?
Thank you. I was just simply going to comment on the funding work stream. It was something certainly subject to discussion this morning in the audit committee, and the agreement was that there would be a separate work stream as part of the budget scrutiny working group this year that looked specifically at the funding for Hub Owen and the implications on our own levy, should it be necessary to either fully fund or part fund the training centre through our levy. And that's looking not only at 27-28, but also over the medium-term resource time frame, and also looking at that affordability. So I would concur wholly that it's really, really important that when it does come back to members for a decision, that actually all of the sensitivity analysis, including potential range of interest rates, are fully considered, such that by the time you make that decision, it's fully informed.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you, officers.
Thank you, Matt. I think you're quite right that ideally we want some milestones in terms of having those discussions, but what's really difficult is in terms of, for instance, external funding from Welsh Government. We don't know if we've got a red light, a green light or an amber light, and until we've got some indication, it makes it very difficult going forward with those discussions. Councillor Rhonda Roberts. Rondo?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions, really, if Justin can answer them. Going back way back in, when the discussions were around having a training centre or an alternative, were these financial pressures envisaged that far back? Did we know we were going to come down this road? Or be in this position where we are now, what's just been disclosed? And how much have we spent up to now to get us to where we are, please? If with the eventuality that this could fall on its face, and it would be, like you say, plan B, C, D, E or F. Just a couple of queries I've got in my mind now, please, Justin.
Yeah, in terms of budget, we still remain within the budget parameters that were set and agreed with the authority at the previous meeting. In terms of a figure that we've spent to date, I'm really sorry I couldn't give you off the top of my head, but
Recording
in terms
in progress.
of thinking about being reasonably foreseeable, I guess, about the training that we needed. I think our training centre, this is a long-standing issue for us, and I suppose in terms of investment in a training facility, there's probably never going to be a good time for any fire and rescue service or any authority to consider that decision. There's probably always going to be competing pressures in terms of investment. I guess where we are currently is that we think we're in a position of criticality where we need to make this investment, in the short term rather than in the longer term.
Time. Councillor Chris Hughes, Chris?
So, Scotland up and running, not long to England, get their World Cup campaign underway again.
Thanks, Chair. So I was a little bit late to the beginning of the report. I just wondered whether there had been an approach to Ambition North Wales to seek a strategic North Wales view from the authorities rather than going to the authorities in terms of specific revenue cases. But I just wondered that because it wasn't clear from the report.
Irish pork, jumbo sausages, 60 in the back.
Chief?
Yeah.
New Japanese milk rolls.
Sorry, Chair. I believe somebody's not on mute.
Irish chicken,
Is there? No. Can we just check?
Councillor Rhonda Roberts. Rhonda, is it possibly yourself? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to come in with the approach to Ambition North Wales. Yes, Ant Jones and myself have met with them. We have studied the criteria for funding. I think the amount of private sector investment would be challenging for us to be able to submit a bid, but we are working alongside other partners to see if we can do a combined bid, because that would be a very valuable source of funding for us.
Thank you, Chief. Are there
Thank
any
you,
more?
Chair. Yeah.
Any more questions or comments? I can't see any further hands being raised. In that case, you've heard the 3 recommendations which are contained within the report, and all for noting. Can I have somebody propose that we do that? Thank you, Mark. Can I have a second? Thank you, John. Even will you all show that you're in agreement? Diolch yn fawr. That's been unanimously agreed. So we move on to item number 6, which is the draft annual governance statement for 2025-26. I think it's ACFO Ant Jones that's presenting this. Ant?
Yeah, yes, it is. Thank you. So this report presents the annual draft governance statement for 2025-26. We always look back with this statement, and it provides assurance that the authority continues to maintain effective governance, risk management and internal control arrangements in accordance with our statutory duties. The preparation and publication of the statement forms part of the authority's responsibilities under the Accounts and Audit Wales regulations of 2014, and reflects principles set out by the SIP for a Solace framework delivering good governance in local government. It also supports the authority's wider legislative obligations, including operating in accordance with the relevant law and regulation, safeguarding public funds, securing economy, efficiency and effectiveness in the use of the resources, and also demonstrating alignment with the Welsh legislation and policy expectations, including the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015 and the Fire and Rescue Service National Framework for Wales. The statement confirms that governance arrangements continue to strengthen during 2025-26, including enhanced oversight of risk, performance and programme delivery, and the establishment of a culture board in response to the CREST advisory review. It also identifies focused programme of improvements for 26-27 to ensure continued compliance, assurance and organisational improvement. The annual governance statement was also presented this morning at Audit Committee, and members are asked to note the contents of the annual governance statement for 25-26 and approve its submission to Audit Wales in line with the statutory requirements. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Ant. Just before I throw it open to members, you mentioned that it was presented to the Audit Committee this morning. Is there any feedback from the Audit Committee in terms of this scrutiny that we should be made aware of? Thank you.
We had a debate around the governance structure, which is displayed within the annual governance statement. There was some discussions around the principal officer structure in the service, and that's why the structure highlights that we're currently carrying a vacancy at Deputy Chief Fire Officer and Assistant Chief Officer. There were some questions around our project management function and how we intend to enhance that with a dedicated project manager officer role. And also there were some questions around our performance monitoring and how we intend to try and create the pathway so that our performance monitoring can be viewed externally. So on our outwardly facing website, that's certainly one of the ambitions for the corporate communications team in the coming year. So those were the general sort of areas of debate that the questions were had around the governance statement this morning.
Yeah, I'll throw it open to members now for comments and questions. Councillor Mark Young, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the report talks about a positive internal audit opinion, which is really good. It recognises about the statement itself, admits that the programme and project management office needs strengthening. So I just for 26, 27. So I guess it'd be reasonable how that's going to be done. So you've made the statement. Can you just give us a flavour, please, if that's okay, Anthony, on how that's going to happen, please? Thank you.
Of course, yeah, happily. So we about 12 months or so ago, we introduced a project support officer role into the organisation, and Lucy's been with us, I'd say, about 12 months, and that was the infancy of us sort of recognising the need to. We have so many significant projects and programmes that are coming over the horizon. Some of those, like Justin's described, in relation to our training centre. Some of them are national projects, such as the Emergency Services Network changeover, which is being imposed on us, that change in how we communicate as emergency services, but also a recognition that there is an awful lot of programme and project work within the organisation, and we needed to strengthen our approach. So we introduced that project support officer role. Lucy's first task was to really sort of root and branch review of what we're doing and how we're doing it. We've got some really good examples of where the need has arisen, and we've implemented dedicated project managers. So Louise is currently the project manager for the training centre project, and she also has an apprentice, Mike, working with her now. So, and we have just embarked on a fixed term contract for a project manager to support us in the changeover in our record management system. So what we're recognising that actually that we have some very talented people in the organisation, but there are times when you need dedicated project and programme management expertise to make sure that these things are delivered within budget, on track, within scope. So for a couple of months now, Mike Plant and the team have been working on developing a job description for a dedicated programme management officer. And that role is currently in job evaluation, and the division for that role would be to take over overarching, if you like, control of this area of the business and drive us forward to deliver that continued improvement forward.
Okay, so just very quickly, so it's great that you've had a substantial assurance, so well done everyone. You know your risk and you've got a plan to get better, so Jochen, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I noticed that under the improvement actions, one of them listed is prepare for potential future changes to FRA governance arrangements. And I understand that there has been some slippage with that timetable. So I don't know if the Chief is able to comment where we're at with that. Diolch.
The timetable, not with in respect of North Wales Fire and Rescue Service, but you're quite right, Chair. South Wales Fire and Rescue Service were due to implement the new arrangements June, July this year. I am understood that they're not in a place to do that just yet. We did hope that they could go first so that we could learn from their implementation of the new governance arrangements, so that in 12 months' time, when Mid and West Wales Fire Service and ourselves move to this new arrangements, then we will have learnt from South Wales. I suppose, I am agnostic when it comes to working with appropriate governance and scrutiny arrangements. However, with the new Welsh Government, the new administration in place, if members wanted to, we could write to them to ask if they still intended to go ahead implementing these arrangements and if their timescales were still the same. But that's very much up to you members whether you wish to do that.
Thank you, Chief. My own view, my own personal view is that it is problematic if we don't know if things are going to fall into place by May next year, and it would be good to know if if we are going to have those arrangements implemented next year or not. So perhaps we do need to ask for clarification in terms of the timetable. Would members be happy to agree that we do write along the lines that the Chief suggests, expressing those concerns and asking that question? I can, if I put it, Councillor Mark Young, are you happy to propose that?
I'll second it if you propose, Chair.
I wasn't going to propose it as the Chair, but I will propose it. You've seconded it.
Okay.
Will all members show that you agree? Diolch yn fawr, thank you.
Sensible, job
Councillor Anthony Wren. Anthony, do you want to come in with the question? Your hand was raised.
Yes, sorry, it's not a question or a comment on the material or content of the report. I've just found a silly little typo. I don't know if you wanted to know about that. Page 24 of the report, or 38 of the report's pack, in the section marked conclusion, second paragraph down, fifth line in, last word the with an extra I on the end of it.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you very much. We'll pick that up.
The only one I could spot.
The copy that goes to Audit Wales will make that correction. Thank you so much.
Well done, Anthony. Are there any more questions or comments, please? I can't see any hands being raised, so we move to the recommendations, and the recommendations are: it is recommended that members note the content of the annual governance statement for 2025-26, and secondly, approve that the annual governance statement for 2025-26 be provided to Audit Wales in line with the Accounts and Audit Wales Regulations 2014. Can I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Chris. A seconder? Thank you, Mark. Will you all show that you're in agreement? Diolch yn fawr. That's been unanimously passed. So we go on to item number 7, which is the draft annual statement of accounts for 2025-26. And I think it's Elgin Roberts, Head of Finance, who's presenting this. Prynawn da, Elgin? No?
Actually, Chair, it's myself.
All right, prynawn da again. Helen, over to you.
Diolch yn fawr. I'm really pleased to be able to present the draft statement of accounts for 25-6 for your consideration today. I'm actually slightly nervous. If Councillor Wren has spotted a typo in the annual governance statement, I suspect he's probably been adding up the statement of accounts as well. These were also presented to the Audit Committee this morning, and Audit Wales, our external auditors, were present. Overall, the Audit Committee noted the outturn position and endorsed the draft accounts. In terms of some of the areas of sensitivity, there was discussion around a number of items, including the remuneration of senior officers' pay, and that will be an area of focus for external audit. The carry forward of capital schemes into 25-6, noting that schemes are being carried forward. The Audit Committee sought assurance that there weren't any issues of governance. And also they received assurance on the pension scheme liability. So if you look at the balance sheet, there's a very large liability relating to the firefighters' pension scheme. That's there out of necessity because it is an unfunded scheme. It does move in terms of size each year based on the actuarial valuation. So by way of context, these are the authority's unaudited accounts and have been prepared in line with the CITFA code and our statutory requirements. They were produced and certified at the end of May, which is ahead of the revised Welsh Government timetable, which is the end of June. This early closure enables the team to focus on the budget setting for 2027-28, and also the external audit by Audit Wales is now in progress. Following the conclusion of the audit, the final accounts will come back to yourselves as members for approval later in the year. I'd like to start by acknowledging the hard work of the finance team in producing the accounts within such timescales. It's a time of year that accountants love and hate in equal measures. It's really nice to close a financial year and prepare the accounts, but the amount of work that has to go into them can't be underestimated. And in our case, I'd like to acknowledge the work of Elgan Roberts, our Head of Finance, and also Katie Owen, who's our Deputy Head of Finance. And both of them have been instrumental in achieving these deadlines. You'll notice in the pack today that the accounts actually run to 86 pages, and that's absolutely necessary to ensure that we comply with the CIPFA code. I would, however, point you to page 1 to 18, because that contains a narrative report setting out the key financial performance and position in what is a much more user-friendly format. You'll see within the narrative report there is a clear link between the financial aspects of our organisation and the activity, and in particular I would encourage members to look at the table on page 5 of the accounts. In overall terms, I'm pleased to confirm that the authority has maintained a stable and well-managed financial position during the year, despite a range of pressures. And on the revenue side, we've delivered a small surplus of £121,000, and this is consistent with the detailed forecast that was provided to the Fire Authority in April. Whilst this is a relatively modest surplus, it's important that in the current financial climate, it reflects strong budgetary control, careful vacancy management and disciplined financial oversight across the organisation throughout the year. As a consequence of this, the usable reserves have increased to 11.8 million at the year end. And importantly, the earmarked reserves are not excess funds and they are held to support known commitments such as asset replacement, insurance liabilities and service investment. One notable one being the replacement of the emergency service network, which is not only across our sector, but also across the emergency sector as a whole. Over the medium term, we plan to use these reserves, and that's consistent with the medium term resource strategy approved by the authority in April. On the capital side, total investment during the year was just over £5 million, and this has supported our key priorities. That's including the replacement of ageing fire appliances, infrastructure projects such as ICT replacement, equipment and essential building works. Expenditure has also taken place through grant funding to support our commitment to reduce our carbon consumption. And of course, we've got the continued development of the Hub Owen Training Centre. Following the year end, 3.9 million of approved schemes are going to be carried into 26/7, reflecting the timing rather than any loss of delivery. Looking more widely at the financial position, the balance sheet does remain robust with appropriate levels of assets, liquidity and borrowing and continued compliance with the Treasury Management Strategy. The full year strategy was reported to the Audit Committee today, and that noted that our borrowing exists within prescribed limits and that we're carefully managing our cash investments. I'd like to give assurance to members that the accounts have been prepared in accordance with all of the relevant accounting standards and regulations. Our governance arrangements supporting the accounts have also been reviewed, and you'll notice in the pack today that there's a response to Audit Wales in terms of their inquiries, and that confirms a strong control environment, a low risk of fraud, and no material governance concerns that we've identified. Before concluding, I would like to highlight that although the current position is stable, the forward look does remain challenging. Pressures linked to pay, pensions, general inflation and capital funding continue, and we do expect reserves to be used in a planned and prudent way. These will all be key considerations as we move into the budget setting process for 27-28. In closing, I'd like to reiterate my thanks once again to the finance teams and also colleagues across the service for their work in delivering the accounts to the deadline and to the standard that you've seen in the pack today. Today, we're being asked to note the draft outturn, endorse the movement in reserves and support the governance response that we've provided to Audit Wales. Thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to take any queries.
Thank you, Helen, for that comprehensive overview. Over to members for comments and questions, please. Councillor Mark Young. Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Helen. So really good, but you did mention a few challenges, wages, pensions, and we've got the training centre in the background as well. So I'm going to touch on reserves. Are they sufficient, and do we need to look at that for not only picking up the challenges, but maybe contributions we need to make in regard to the training centre, etc.? Any thoughts on that, please?
Thank you. Yes, the reserves are detailed within note 23 to the accounts, and you'll see that over recent years we've endeavoured to build up those reserves. There's two types of reserve, one of which is the earmarked reserve, and that's where we know that expenditure is likely to be incurred in the future, and that's a very prudent thing to do. So all of the reserves there are for known commitments, whether it be investment in ICT infrastructure, replacement of fire appliances, but also the emergency service network. More generally, we've got a general fund, and that general fund is used where expenditure in any given year is higher than we anticipate. That could be a number of things. It could be spate conditions where activity spikes for whatever reason. Never say never, but I think the strategy that we've adopted over in more recent years has given us a better buffer than we had, say, 5 or 6 years ago. So those reserves are only as good as the monitoring that we undertake. And what I would say is across the organisation, we have an internal group that meets on a quarterly basis and therefore monitors the budget. So we're better at forecasting the shocks before they happen. So at this moment in time, I'm satisfied that we've established the reserves for reasonable purposes, and we do have a buffer by way of the general fund. I'm cautious in that respect because given that we've got the training centre, it's really, really important that we've got that visibility of our financial reserves over the planning cycle.
Okay, thanks for that, Jacobo. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Helen.
And I think I need to sort of draw members' attention to that we need to congratulate Helen and her team for their financial planning / forecasting, because in the budget for this year, the pay award was planned at 3.8%. The other two Welsh Fire Services are budgeted for 3.2% and 3.0%. The national employers have made an offer of 3.8% to the FBU, who have recommended approval to members, although they are going to ballot. So, da iawn, Helen, well done. Dafydd, dych chi eisiau dod I fewn? Diolch.
Diolch Cadeirydd, ailadrodd eich llongyfarchiadau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to echo your word of congratulations to you, Helen, for signing the accounts for the first time. I've been doing so for a number of years, and it's very nice to see them being submitted timely and in an organised manner. And I'd also, as Helen has indicated, I'd like to thank Elgan and the finance team for all the work involved in preparing the accounts. I mean, what we see today is just the tip of the iceberg, but it involves a lot of background work. It's good news that we have them this early on. You as a committee today will not be approving them. They have been signed off by Helen. They will be audited and they'll come back to the full authority if the auditors will have completed their work come July, possibly before then, but getting these out of the way early on will enable our finance staff to focus on regulatory matters for the benefit of the service rather than responding to the questions of auditors for months to come. So it would be good to have them back by July, and well done, Helen and Elgan. Thank you so much.
David, any other comments or questions from members regarding this report? I can't see any hands being raised, so Councillor Anthony Wren. Anthony?
Sorry, one last question to Helen. She was speaking about resilience to shocks. What's your views on the impact of the cost of diesel and petrol and what have you on our fleet going forwards? Because obviously these accounts are up to the 31st of March. Yeah, your thoughts, please.
Thank you very much. Twofold, really. Looking backwards, we've been able to manage the shock within the budget. Looking forwards is something that we are carefully managing. Generally, we're moving our car fleet and our what we call our white and grey fleet to either hybrid or full electric. But without a doubt, our fire appliances still remain as diesel. The budget as set is going to have significant pressure, but it's one of those areas on, if you look at the earmarked reserve, there is a reserve for inflation pressures. So it's something, if we have to, that we can manage. But more importantly, it's being managed throughout the year as opposed to finding it out after the year end that you've got financial difficulty.
Anthony, you do you have a supplementary? You okay with that answer? Yeah, good. Thank you. So moving to the recommendations, therefore, so there's 4 recommendations. 1, that we note the unaudited revenue and capital outturn position. Number 2, note the unaudited balance sheet position. Number 3, note and endorse the movement to and from reserves. And 4, endorse the response to Audit Wales in relation to the matters of governance relevant to the statement of accounts. Can I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Mark, and a seconder. Thank you, Anthony. Will you show any agreement? Diolch yn fawr. That's been unanimously passed. So we move on to item number 8, which is the Strategic Risk Register Management for Assurance. And it's Mike Plant, Head of Planning, Performance and Transformation, I think, who's presenting this. Now, Mike.
Ond Cadeirydd, diolch am y cyfle I drafod yr adroddiad risg strategol.
Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the strategic risk report.
Register report. Purpose of the report, we've already discussed risk in a lot of what we've already discussed. The members will be given an update today following recent Strategic Risk Committee meetings as to our risk appetite statement and an overview of the Strategic Risk Register and what risks remain high or very high. So just a little bit of background, the Strategic Risk Register concentrates on known risks that, if they were to come to fruition, could potentially prevent the authority from achieving its planned outcomes or delivering statutory core duties and functions. The registered entries are assigned a risk score that's looked at by the group and are regularly re-evaluated by heads of department and officers to ensure that they reflect the current state and the predicted effect of any control measures that we put in on mitigations. Under this policy, the executive panel receives a summary report on strategic risks at least twice a year, and there's also an opportunity between meetings should they choose to do so, to discuss those risks with the ACFO or myself in more detail, should that be the case. The heads of department who attend the Strategic Risk Committee are responsible for identifying and manage the risks they own, and the Strategic Risk Committee has been added to the governance assurance structure, part of which we talked about previously, annual governance statement, etc., to make sure that that's covered correctly and in line with the best practice, which is the management of risk principles and concepts, or colloquially known as the Orange Book, which authorities use to ensure that risk is managed appropriately. Members will know and have been involved in some training that has been brought in following previous audits over the last 12 months. I'm delighted to say that thanks to the hard work of a range of individuals, this training has been delivered across all levels, from level 1 up to level 4 for the Fire Authority, and the service leadership team recently completed the level 3 for the second time, to further embed awareness of that. It's fair to say as well that since the last report, that Mersey Internal Audit have come back and had a revisit as to some of the suggestions that they gave us for improvement in the initial audit, and I've been provided assurance that the recommendations delivered continue to be addressed. There's a meeting with Angharad from MIAA imminently in the next week, to also look at how we can try and simplify the Strategic Risk Register
and build in some automated prompts for review. That were one of the recommendations that she gave. So we look forward to that. So just before we go into the main review of the risk appetite, just a reminder to members, about level 4 training. When we talk about risk, defined as a combination of the likelihood and consequences of hazardous events. When we talk about the risk, the likelihood of risk in this context is the chance of something happening, maybe described by the probability, frequency, or uncertainty of events, and there's certainly lots of uncertainty around the globe as we speak. And the consequence is the outcome of an event, specifically the severity or extent of harm caused by an event. So I know it's basic language, but to put it into context, this is how we look at and create our stances on the strategic risk that we face. So when it comes to financial risks, our response operation risks, people risks, our information and information governance risks, and also our assets and estates, the Strategic Risk Committee continue on behalf of the authority to adopt a cautious stance, which again, going by the Orange Book, is well defined in how it addresses that, and the level of risk that we're willing to take. When it comes to the technology and cyber stroke legal risk, the authority continues to adopt a minimal risk, in that we will a lot more control measures and time and resources put in to protecting us from cyber attacks, etc., for obvious reasons. And last but not least, when we look at our reputational risks, and we've done that through a lot of the emergency cover review, CREST work, and collective agreement work, we've adopted an open stance, realising that there may at times be pressures on this due to not being able to keep everyone happy every minute of the day, but that we can accept some of that while mitigation is in place. Whereas we will accept very, very low risk when it comes to cybersecurity for obvious reasons. So coming towards the end of that section, the strategic risk register as is, members are always made aware of risks that are deemed to still be high or very high, and what our appetite is towards that. We've already discussed, so I won't repeat the information that was delivered by ACFO Justin Evans in relation to the training centre, so I won't repeat that. However, it still is on our high to very high on our risk register for a number of reasons that we've already discussed. We also still and will continue, by all accounts, to have technology and cyber as a high strategic risk due to the increase in cyber attacks on all sorts of different organisations, local authorities, etc. Even within North Wales recently, there's been occasions of this, so we need to make sure that we invest in the cyber security to protect the organisation from that. We've discussed financial risks earlier in the report to do from ACFO Helen McGath, so I'm not going to repeat all that, but there are mitigations in there with respect of the pension pressures and cash flow, etc., that are managed through that finance committee. Response and operations, we continue to have the risk of not being able to deliver our core statutory duties under the Fire and Rescue Service Act. Were we to have additional challenges in recruitment, etc. And traditionally, as the members are aware, this is very often in some of the quieter, more rural areas where it's challenging to keep retention of staff. So that risk still sits high on the risk register, although we do have a number of mitigation and control measures in place, such as the collective agreement and all the resources due to recent restructures that have put people in better positions to help speak to employers and to recruit, etc.
So, having looked through the risks, we also, for members can be aware that we did have since this report was created, we have had a service leadership team strategic planning day where we looked at a Postello model to look at external and internal pressures that are coming in, to do some horizon scanning and have a chance to have a really good think and a discussion as members of SLT as to what we see coming down the road. Has been captured now and is being put together to present. And there were a couple of risks on that we were aware of, but that have escalated. So we will present that. That will become evident on the next report when we present it to members in the future. So I'd like to thank everybody who's been involved in working on the strategic risk register, the members of the planning, performance and transformation team, as well as all the heads of department who continue to be badgered by myself in the sense of looking at keeping strategic risks to the forefront of our minds to make sure that we're not caught out by anything in order to deliver the best service possible that we can to our communities. So I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I'm more than happy to ask any questions that you may have.
Chair, I wonder if I could just come in while anybody formulates their questions. Risk management is an area that we've invested a lot of time and energy in. And it's one of the two key questions at the end of every committee that we hold internally. Have we identified any risks? Is it enough to be put onto the strategic risk register? And at the same time, we also look at the cultural implications. So I think this shows just how important we take risk management within the service. Thank you.
Okay, is the chair there? Just a question.
I've had a
No,
quick I think
he's been disconnected.
Okay. Shall I step in very quickly, everyone? I'm not trying to jump in anyone's job. I'm trying to be helpful.
Please.
Okay. Well, I'll start off with a question and then I'll take any others. So obviously, the question around cybersecurity has been mentioned. You mentioned some local authorities who've been challenged by this recently. You're very honest about it. It is a concern. I understand we can't go into deep discussion, but the report, I won't go outside the report, so everything I'm touching on is in the report. It talks about recommendations, etc. I do think members need comfort to know what's happening in more detail, but I fully accept that we can't do that in the public forum. Any suggestions of any officers how we deal with that so members can take comfort? Helen, please, Jockenbauer, thank you.
Thank you. I think it's fair to say it is our highest risk. It is evolving and it is dynamic. When it hits, it can be devastating. It's on the forefront not only of the risk management agenda, it's on the forefront of the work undertaken by our ICT team. If it would be helpful to members, perhaps we could take a slot ahead of the October Fire Authority, provide an update, and that will cover everything from the networks that we have in place, the work that we do with our staff to make them risk aware, and also what arrangements we've got in place for dealing with cyber attacks should it happen.
Okay, members, I think that would be a good idea. Can I just see an indication if you support that approach? Please just raise your hand if you think that's a good idea. I think everyone, yeah. Okay, is that okay then, Helen? If I'll just touch base with you on this just to make sure these are the key questions are covered. But I think that'd be a really good idea. And Jockenbauer, thank you for that. I know you're busy, but I do think it's important that we understand and support and challenge where required. So that'd be great. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions, please, on this item? Okay.
Mark, apologies. I
Okay,
don't
no,
know.
that's fine. I'll hand over swiftly and thankfully.
Yeah, I don't know why, but for some unknown reason, I lost
That's
connection. So I don't know if it was mentioned, but you and I did meet 2 weeks ago with Mike to review the strategic risk register, which is part of our role and responsibilities as chair and deputy chair. So we have scrutinised it together. If there's no other questions or comments, we can move to the recommendation.
Chair, we just agreed to have that update on the cyber element as me and you discussed with them in our pre-meeting. So that was endorsed. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Thank you for stepping in. So the recommendation is that we note the strategic risk register and review and approve the risk appetites in paragraphs 13 to 20, which has been done. Can I have somebody propose, please? Thank you, Mark. Second, Chris, not showing agreement. Excellent. So we move on to the last report for today's meeting, which is the annual EDI Performance Assessment Report for 2025-26. Chief, I know it's your name that's down. I don't know if you're presenting this report. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, I'm happy to present the report, Chair. So this report is part of our good governance arrangements that we discussed earlier in the meeting. It tracks progress against our 5-year equality, diversity and inclusion strategy. That strategy was brought to the authority back in 2024, and it links with our community risk management plan. It also fulfills our legal obligations, but more importantly, it upholds our organisational values. That strategy focuses on 4 key aims. And I think that really shows why it's important to us, because it's about cultural development, it's about embedding inclusivity within the organisation. It's about attracting, recruiting and retaining talented people, wherever they are, whatever their characteristics. It's important that we are a trusted member of communities and that communities believe that they can ask us for services. And sadly, in this day and age, there are some minorities that feel that some services from some sections, and I would hope it wouldn't be the fire and rescue service, are they're reluctant to come forward for those services. So we need to be seen to be in our communities. We need to continue to build that trust. And we also need to develop effective partnerships. So this report is both a text and a visual representation of the activities that have been undertaken this year to support those 4 aims. And we just make it sort of very clear what it is that we've been doing. And you can see there's a wide range of activities across the whole of North Wales. And I'm sure members are very pleased to see that we are reducing and evolving, reducing the gap between the gender pay gap. I think nationally, that pay gap is 11.2%. And in North Wales Fire and Rescue Service, it has now gone down from 8.29% to 5.27%. So we're seeing improvements as people are encouraged to go for promotion and to go through the organisation. So I'm happy to take any questions or comments that members might have before we move to the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you, Chief. And as you say, the report contains details of wide-ranging activities and events, a lot of good practice in the report. So, da Councillor Anthony Wren. Anthony?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just regarding the gender pay gap, whilst it's great to have these figures and see the figure is actually reducing, it's never ever going to hit parity, is it, unless we have exactly the same number of males and exactly the same number of females doing exactly the same roles. The fact that all that really matters, should I say, is that if you have a male firefighter and a female firefighter of both the same experience and been serving for the same time, doing the same shift system, they're both getting the same pay. I'm sure that is an assurance you can give.
Yes, and I'm glad that you added that extra bit about it's not just having equal number of male and female firefighters, it's ensuring that they are spread throughout the organisation and not clustered at a particular section of the organisation. And I guess what we've seen in the number of women that we've attracted into the organisation, we are now seeing them develop their careers. They are rising, and I think it's probably, well, I would say this, important that there are senior women as role models in this fire and rescue service so that people can see, yes, that we can get to that position, and we need to encourage all talented people to go for promotion and to rise up through the organisation. But you're quite right. It's an ongoing challenge. We'll never actually get there, but we intend to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I can't see any other hands being raised, so we move to the recommendation, which is recommend that the full Fire Rescue Authority approve the publication of the annual EDI report for 2025-26 on the services website. Can I have somebody to propose, please? Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Anthony. Will you all show that you're in agreement? Diolch yn fawr. That's been unanimously passed again. As I mentioned, there's no urgent matters, so that brings the meeting to an end. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance and contributions. Diolch yn fawr. Hwyl fawr. Take care.
you all.
Diolch yn fawr.
Hwyl fawr. Diolch.
Recording stopped.